If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 10 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike into Busch Stadium. In the area code 314, it will be a burning bush, as described in Exodus 3:14, on November 27, 2024. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Barack Obama will replace Michelle. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on November 4th, and that his prophetic funeral, in which Trump will sit next to Obama, will be on November 8th. It is predicted that President Trump will die from a heart attack on January 1st, 2025. It is also predicted that Trump's heart attack will be triggered by a directed energy weapon that will target Trump through Bluetooth technology. The components inside the pointy thing that Trump took will facilitate this, and it is believed that when Barack Obama is sitting next to Trump at Jimmy Carter's funeral, Obama will obtain Trump's Bluetooth MAC address, which will be used to target Trump with a directed energy weapon. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on December 16th. I am predicting that Israel will bomb Iran on December 17th. Israel will nuke and completely destroy Damascus, Syria on December 26th, 2024. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on October 30th, a Wednesday at 3 a.m., because Simon and Garfunkel's first album was named Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. It is predicted that after Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash, Joe Biden will appoint Michelle Obama as his vice president. On December 17th, the Democrat Party will use their electoral votes to make Michelle Obama the president-elect. It is predicted that on either December 22nd or 25th, Joe Biden will suffer a stroke. It is predicted that on December 26th, 2024, Joe Biden will step down and Vice President Michelle Obama will become the 47th president. It is predicted that on December 26th, Michelle Obama will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. On January 12th, 2025, Michelle Obama will step down and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. His public inauguration ceremony will be on January 20th, 2025. June 8th, 2025, the true Feast of Pentecost in the calendar that watches for new moons, will be the day of the resurrection rapture event. It is predicted that on June 9th, the day after the rapture, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens, and it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed, that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025, which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 23rd, 2025, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth, which will trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be on the Day of Atonement, October 1st, 2025. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. All right, welcome. This video is making the prediction that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on October 30th, 2024. And this is a unique video amongst the other videos in that it will be a foundational video, if you will, regarding specifically also how October 30th is known. In other words, I will be explaining briefly some very extremely important things regarding how October 30th is known, but also in the process, so this is the date, right? The other videos have been talking about the trail of signs leading to this date, and in finally finding the end of the trail, October 30th, some very special things are able to be explained, which makes this video a little bit of a summary of some very amazing things. All right, and it'll be a brief summary of different amazing things. So you're going to get a lot in a short period of time here, a lot of profound, extremely important information. So in other words, of course, make sure you watch this video, but the wise person, in my opinion, will recognize that when the prediction comes to pass, that they should watch every minute of every video on this channel, including all of the Paul Simon videos. Well, let's get started. This is this is so amazing, this video. This video will just be a reading of what I already wrote, and I'll expand on some things as it comes. This email is documenting the prediction that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on October 30th, 2024. This will be 5 days before it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die on November 4th, 2024. Now, the reason why I put that in the first sentence is because no skeptic is going to believe if I predict that Jimmy Carter will die on November 4th, that it's from God. Now, that's understandable completely. Jimmy Carter is 100 years old. He could die and actually should die, logically, any day now. But that being the case, he has been in the hospice, well, whatever. We'll leave it at that. The skeptic is correct. There's no reason for getting excited in any way over a prediction for the death of Jimmy Carter. But the reasons for how November 4th is known make it so that the skeptic is now irrational. Once the skeptic has listened to and heard and appreciated the reasons, the information for how November 4th is known ahead of time, then it is my opinion that the person that remains a skeptic is doing so out of irrationality. And that is, just because someone is a skeptic doesn't make them rational at all. There's many people that are skeptic of many things, and they're not rational about their skepticism, right? Including the skepticism that a God exists, for example. The evidence is overwhelming. They are completely irrational in many ways. The idea, for example, that the universe in the material world came from nothing. The Big Bang proves that there was a beginning to the universe, and so it's scientifically impossible that everything came from nothing. But we'll leave that aside. Let's just continue. The point here is that this is the reason for two predictions Now, Paul Simon is 82. He's old, but he could live another 10 years or more. That's a lot of days. And to predict the precise date, that's a prediction. Furthermore, once again, the reasons for how I know October 30th are clear, and that makes it indisputable. But the person who remains a skeptic after both of these predictions, for both of these men, 5 days apart, on October 30th and November 4th, well, okay, you get the idea. So the point is that both of these men's deaths are being predicted at the same time, 5 days apart. If you want to play the so-called odds game as to how I could get lucky, that's really ridiculous, obviously. Okay, so Paul Simon's best-selling album as a solo artist was Graceland. The first lyric in the song describes him traveling down the highway to get to Graceland, Elvis's mansion in Tennessee. The highway he would have traveled on to get to Graceland would have been the I-55. 5 singles were released from the Graceland album. In the Bible, the number 5 is symbolic of God's grace, as in Graceland. Jesus was pierced 5 times, right? His 2 arms, his 2 legs, and the 1 spear into his side. On the date, April 10th, 410, in 2024, Paul Simon sang his song Graceland at a state dinner in the White House mansion, which is situated on 5 acres of land. I should repeat that, which is situated on 5 acres of land. The date 410 hints at the number 14. It was actually a state dinner for the Japanese Prime Minister, and outside of the US, including Japan, the date 410 is written as 10-4, which hints at 14, and 14 is the 5th semi-prime number. The Elvis Graceland Mansion is situated on 14 acres. The Graceland Mansion is symbolic of the Jewish temple, which in the Bible is symbolized by the number 5 and 5 times 5. This symbolism requires more explanation, but that's what is symbolized here in the signs. Okay? And in the Bible, the temple and Temple Mount, their dimensions are symbolized with the number 5 and 5 times 5. All right? Paul Simon is Jewish, and the name Paul Simon is equal to 500 in Hebrew gematria. Simon's only number 1 hit as a solo artist was 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Simon and Garfunkel's 5th album, Bridge Over Troubled Water, was their last album together, and it won 5 Grammy Awards. Simon's most recent solo album is his 5 plus 5 plus 5th, 15th. It was released exactly 500 months, exactly, after the Simon and Garfunkel famous reunion concert in Central Park that attracted 500,000 people. The concert in Central Park in Manhattan was exactly 9 months and 11 days after John Lennon was shot next to Central Park in Manhattan. Satan is mentioned in Revelation 9:11, and the 500th word, G500 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance, is the word for Antichrist, Satan's representative. This word is used 5 times in the New Testament. The mark of the Antichrist is the CVD thing, the SHOT. The CVD is 5 letters. Simon's predicted death on October 30th, 2024, will be 5 days before it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die. Simon performed at Carter's pre-inaugural ball. So here, Paul Simon is predicted to die just before the death of Jimmy Carter, and Paul Simon performed just before the presidency of Jimmy Carter. And that's very prophetic, as explained in other videos, for the significance of the symbolism for Jimmy Carter in God's signs, his inauguration day. Paul Simon is from New York City. The recent sale of Paul Simon's mansion in the 5th state to join the Union, less than an hour from central Manhattan. Oh, and by the way, John Lennon was shot 9 months and 11 days in Manhattan after Paul Simon's Central Park concert, and Lennon was shot next to Central Park. And Manhattan is the location of the events of 9/11. All right. So Paul Simon's sale of his mansion in the 5th state, less than an hour from central Manhattan, New York City, was a prophetic sign. The sale of the mansion was in the news because it took 3.5 years to sell. In Bible prophecy, 3.5 years is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. This is huge. It's mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy, this 3.5 year period. Paul Simon, again, his name equals 500 in Hebrew gematria, and the 500th word in the Bible concordance is the word for the Antichrist. And again, the Antichrist's period is mentioned 7 times as being 3.5 years. That's why Paul Simon's mansion in the 5th state took 3.5 years to sell. Okay, Simon suffered a loss of 2 times 3 million. The Antichrist wore number 23 in high school basketball, and Isaiah chapter 23 regards judgment and destruction of America. Okay, Paul Simon is symbolism for America, his song America and American Tune being one reason why. As well, 23 pairs of chromosomes are altered when a person takes the mark of the Antichrist. In God's signs, oh, and by the way, that's what John Lennon was SHO'd. It begins with a show and ends with begins with a shaw and ends with a T. Okay? Because things that come out of guns and go into people are symbolic of the things that come out of things and go into people. Okay, that's why all of the Antichrist connection here. And that's why John Lennon, all right? Now, also, music is frequencies. And I don't know if I get into it in this video, so I'll just mention it now. The mark of the Antichrist that has put the components into people will be triggered by, or rather the components inside people from the thing, mark of the Antichrist, will be triggered by 5G frequencies. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 2, it is said that Satan is the prince of the power of the air, which is why 5G frequencies among those who have taken the thing will trigger mass demonic possession. And that's what music is symbolizing too. Music is frequencies in the air. And the mark of the Antichrist changes the 23 pairs of chromosomes. Okay. In God's signs, the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by 3 times 9, because the number 9 is the most important number in God's signs. It's from the Bible. It symbolizes God's judgment. And in the Bible, the number 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist. For example, Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, was the 13th generation from Adam. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 13th days of the month. And the 2 Antichrists are described in the 13th chapter of Revelation. Well, so that's one reason why 3 times 9 is a number that symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist. But anyway, Simon originally listed his mansion for $13.9 million. He then lowered the price to $11.9 million. As will be explained, Simon is associated with 9/11 in 2001. He performed at on Saturday Night Live right after 9/11, and also at the 10-year anniversary at the memorial. But also Revelation 9/11, and that's why John Lennon was shot 9 months and 11 days before the prophetic reunion concert of Paul Simon or Garfunkel, because Revelation 9:11 is the verse that symbolizes the demons tormenting people who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. All right? And by the way, it's King Apollyon, and that's why the King of Rock's mansion is associated with Paul Simon. Also, the mansion in Graceland is located in Memphis, Tennessee, named after Memphis, Egypt, in the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt, because in the Bible, Egypt and the king of Egypt are symbolic of the Antichrist system and the Antichrist. So the mansion is 8,800 square feet. Paul Simon's mansion. And on 9/11, there were the heroes of the 88th floor, and the Tribute in Lights art installation. Okay, so again, Paul Simon's mansion, 8,800 square feet. On 9/11, there were the heroes of the 88th floor. And the Tribute in Light art installation that commemorated the Twin Towers was made up of 88 searchlights. Also, through the 9/11 events, God pointed to George Washington, and according to Wikipedia, there are 88 places in America named Washington. The mansion was finally sold to Richard Gere, the star of the movie Chicago, a prophetic sign in itself. In God's signs, Chicago points to the Antichrist. I mean, the movie Chicago is a prophetic sign in itself. Another story. In God's signs, Chicago points to the Antichrist and president from Chicago. The name of Simon's mansion, the sale of Simon's mansion in New Canaan, Connecticut, hints at the Promised Land and Graceland. October 30th, 2024 will be exactly 5 weeks after the announcement of New York City Mayor Eric Adams' indictment. The Mayor Adams' residence of Gracie Mansion, as in Graceland Mansion, or rather hints at that, was raided by government agents, which hints at Paul Simon's song Graceland about the Graceland Mansion. That's why the exact 5 weeks between the raiding of Gracie Mansion and Paul Simon's death, who Paul Simon sang about the Graceland Mansion. The book that Elvis was reading in the bathroom of his mansion when he died was Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus by Frank Adams. Mayor Adams' mansion hints at this book, Frank Adams, that Elvis was reading in his mansion when he died. The day before the indictment of the New York City mayor, Paul Simon gave a rare private concert in New York City. The raid of Mayor Adams' Gracie Mansion that targeted him and his political family of AIDS hints at the fictitious mansion of the Adams family. The Adams family is Halloween symbolism. The name of the daughter in the Adams family is Wednesday. Simon is predicted to die on the Wednesday before Halloween. On the same day that the New York mayor's Gracie Mansion was raided, The Tonight Show aired a video of Jimmy Kimmel and Prince Harry going through a haunted mansion in New York City. Prince Harry has famously visited the King of Rock's mansion in Graceland. The raid of Gracie Mansion and Prince Harry in a haunted mansion was also the day that People.com published an exclusive interview with the King of Rock's granddaughter, the current owner of Graceland Mansion, about the book she just finished writing completed her mother's memoir about her mother and the Graceland mansion. Since Riley Keough's, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but that's Elvis's granddaughter, mother's death, Riley Keough is now the owner of Graceland Mansion. Keough received positive reviews for her leading role as a character named Grace in the movie titled The Lodge. The names Grace and The Lodge hints at Graceland Mansion. The Lodge is a horror movie. The horror genre is more Halloween symbolism. The movie The Lodge was thematically and visually influenced by Alfred Hitchcock's movie Rebecca about a haunted mansion. The movie Rebecca, Alfred Hitchcock's movie, I think is one of his most famous. It is one of his most famous movies, but I think unlike the others, well, it was nominated for 11 Oscar awards. It's quite a lot, so it's a significant movie. Anyway, Rebecca was nominated for an Oscar for Best Screenplay, written by Joan Harrison. Harrison was the first screenwriter to receive 2 Academy Award nominations in the same year in separate categories for co-writing the screenplay for the films Foreign Correspondent and Rebecca. In the same, I don't know if it's separate categories. I think what the precedent here is that she was the first to receive 2 Academy Award nominations in the same category in the same year for writing the screenplay for these 2 different films, okay? Harrison hints at Harris, who will supposedly become the first female president. Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash while she is homeward bound to her $5 million mansion next to the I-5 highway. Simon has a famous song named Homeward Bound, and his song Graceland is about him traveling down the I-55 to the Graceland mansion. Furthermore, I should have written this in this paragraph. Furthermore, Kamala Harris's homeward bound plane will crash into St. Louis, which is near the area of Little Egypt, where Memphis, Tennessee is and Graceland is. In other words, her crash will be pointing to Graceland. In fact, Harris's plane is predicted to crash due to a bird strike, and on the day of the New York mayor's indictment and subsequent raid of his mansion, the New York Yankees, of which Simon is an avid fan and known to be, lost 7-9 to the Baltimore Orioles in New York. The Orioles franchise is originally from St. Louis, and Harris is predicted to crash into a baseball stadium in St. Louis on a Wednesday, exactly 7 times 9 days after the Orioles beat the New York Yankees in New York 7-9. The first lyric in Paul Simon's song Graceland, and by the way, her flight will depart from Washington, which is near Baltimore. It's the same metro area, actually. So that's interesting too. The first lyric in Paul Simon's song Graceland is, quote, "The Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar," unquote. The movie The Shining is about a large hotel, and this is symbolic of this theme of mansion related to Paul Simon. Riley Keough, Elvis Presley's granddaughter and current owner of the Graceland mansion, also starred in another horror movie, It Comes at Night. It premiered at the first annual horror movie film festival named Overlook. The first Overlook Film Festival occurred at the historic Timberline Lodge in Oregon because the movie The Shining used this hotel for its exterior shots of the hotel named Overlook Hotel in the movie. Okay, so again, I'll just repeat this. Elvis's granddaughter starred in another horror movie named It Comes at Night, and it premiered at the first annual horror movie film festival named Overlook, the Overlook Film Festival, and the first Overlook Film Festival occurred at the Timberline Lodge, which is the reason why is because that's the lodge, the hotel that was used in the movie The Shining, which is about a haunted hotel, which is mansion symbolism, part of this mansion theme. Okay? And the hotel in the movie is named Overlook. That's why the name of the film festival, Overlook. The director of It Comes at Night said that The Shining was an inspiration for his movie regarding the layout of the house that is labyrinth-like. So that's the same with The Lodge, by the way. The Lodge is her other movie, Riley Keough's other horror movie here. That's also about a it's mansion theme. Okay. In Bible prophecy, a period of 7 years is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. It Comes at Night is about a plague that sweeps the globe, and it was released exactly 7 years, okay, typo there, before the day that demons will leave their mansion of the bottomless pit and torment those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, the things, you know what I'm talking about and what I'm pointing to if you're watching the video, okay? I'll repeat that. So in Bible prophecy, a period of 7 years is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. It Comes at Night is about a plague that sweeps the globe, and it was released exactly 7 years before the predicted day in which the demonic realm will collide with the earthly realm, when demons come from their mansion, their abode, from the bottomless pit, as described in Revelation chapter 9. So both of these horror movies, which by the way will be June 9th, 2025, the day after the rapture on Pentecost on June 8th, 2025. That, if you will, June 9th will be demonic realm colliding with earthly realm day, a symbolic beginning to what's coming. Both of these horror movies that the granddaughter of the King of Rock starred in, The Lodge and It Comes at Night, point to the Timberline Lodge and the movie The Shining, which is based on the book written by Stephen King. The Revelation chapter 9 is symbolized by Revelation chapter 9, verse 9:11, regarding the king of the demons from the bottomless pit, King Apollyon. In Bible prophecy, King Apollyon rises from his mansion, the bottomless pit, to conduct a genocidal slaughter. As explained in the Shining prophecy video on this channel, the death of the actress of The Shining, Shelley Duvall, on July 11th, 2024, pointed to The Shining with its haunted hotel, which in turn pointed to the hotel that overlooked the river near Berlin that the Nazis used for their conference to formalize the final solution genocide of Jews in 1942. The number 42 is associated with the period of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. In The Shining, there are 42 cars parked outside the Timberline Lodge Hotel. And in the movie, the boy Danny wore a shirt with the number 42 on each shoulder. In the Bible, the number 42 always occurs in the context of slaughter. And the underlying theme of The Shining that director Stanley Kubrick employed to explain why the hotel is haunted is a genocidal slaughter that occurred in history. Stanley Kubrick set this up throughout the movie with props, with subtle clues. The reason for the haunting in the hotel is the slaughter of the buffalo and Native Indians. But the point is that we have slaughter symbolism, and this hotel, the Overlook Hotel, is hinting at the hotel that overlooked the river in Berlin that the Nazis used to formalize their slaughter of the Jews in 42. And the number 42 in the Bible is always in context of slaughter. I could give you the examples. Jehu slaughtered 42 men at the pit. There are 42 cities allotted for people that have committed manslaughter that they can take refuge in. And the she-bear slaughtered 42 boys after the encounter with Elijah. Okay, and then the Antichrist, of course, is involved with the slaughter. Now, that's why it's astounding that there's this 42 theme in the movie, which is accidental, which wasn't put there on purpose by Stanley Kubrick. It's from God. The reason why Danny wears a shirt with 42 on its sleeves is from God. And that's why there are 42 cars in the parking lot. But that's important because the parking lot is the exterior shot of the hotel, and I already explained how the Overlook Film Festival is named after that, but there's the Overlook Hotel in Berlin, if you will, that was in 1942, used by the Nazis for the Final Solution Conference. Okay, in Bible, let's see, now where were we? Okay, so in the Bible, the number 42 always occurs in the context of slaughter, and the underlying theme of The Shining that director Stanley Kubrick employed to explain why the hotel is haunted is a genocidal slaughter that occurred in history. And so was the Final Solution, a genocidal slaughter that occurred in history. The present-day genocide slaughter involves the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing, okay, begins with an M, ends with the N-A, you know what I'm talking about, that is administered into people's shoulders, which is why God put the number 42 on Danny's shoulders in the movie. In Bible prophecy, the period of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 42, and the Holocaust began with the conference in the hall of the hotel in Wannsee, Germany in 42. Shelley Duvall's death on July 11th was 7 times 11 days. Okay, let me repeat that. Shelley Duvall's death on the date 7/11 was exactly 7 times 11 days before September 26th, when Adam's Gracie mansion was raided in New York, and Jimmy Kimmel and Prince Harry toured a haunted mansion in New York, and the published interview of Riley Keough about her book, about her mother and the Graceland mansion. The date 7/11 and 7 times 11 days hints at the slaughter of humanity in the flood, which begins in Genesis 7:11. Genesis 7:11 provides the date the flood began as the 17th day of the second month. September 26th is in turn 2 times 17 days before it is predicted that Paul Simon will die. And Paul Simon is associated with the mansion and all of that. So I've just, in other words, tied Shelley Duvall's death with the mansion in the movie The Shining, the hotel, if you will, the mansion theme, to the death of Paul Simon. Adams' mansion was raided on September 26th, 2024, and he was indicted on the 25th of September, which was 76 days after Shelley Duvall died. Shelley Duvall and Paul Simon dated for 3 years, beginning in 76. Not only this, the way in which they met is a famous story, as they met on the set of Woody Allen's most famous movie, Annie Hall, which was filmed in 76. The name Annie Hall is another hint at a mansion. The Nazis would have used a hall in the hotel for their final solution conference meeting. Additionally, there is the famous ballroom hall in the movie The Shining. It is widely known that Simon broke up with Duvall at the airport before she left for the UK to film The Shining. And again, this all relates to Paul Simon because his song begins with, "The Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar." The Shining hints at demonic possession. Jack Nicholson in the movie becomes demonically possessed. The Shining is this supernatural mental ability that the kid also uses. And this is all symbolism in God's signs for what is coming, because music is frequencies. Paul Simon is known for his music. He sings about the Mississippi Delta shining like a national guitar. I've just now explained how he is connected to the movie The Shining through Shelley Duvall. And I've already explained how Paul Simon is connected with the number 5. And again, I think I already explained, this is because 5G frequencies will facilitate the coming mass demonic possession. And this is symbolism in itself for the prince of the power of the air. Music is frequencies in the air, as are 5G frequencies. And all of this collision between the demonic realm and the earthly realm and the coming mass demonic possession is described in the 5th trumpet of the book of Revelation. Paul Simon's death will be on October 30th, and 5 days before the death of Jimmy Carter, because of this 5G 5th trumpet theme here. But the reason for the prophetic significance of the timing of Paul Simon's death is that his first big hit that made him famous, that launched his career, was Sound of Silence. And in Revelation chapter 8, it begins with, in Revelation 8:1, which is why Paul Simon's most recent album, 7 Psalms, was released at the age of 81 of Paul Simon. Revelation 8:1 speaks of the brief period of silence that John heard, the sound of silence, that preceded the 7 trumpet judgments, hence the 7 Psalms album, which includes the 5th trumpet and the mass demonic possession through 5G frequencies. In other words, the death of Paul Simon is a symbolic beginning. It will communicate, it will trumpet, if you will, a brief period of silence, relative calm, before the destruction begins, because that's what the 7 trumpet judgments are. The judgment, destruction of America, and specifically America, as I will explain here. But also, as I just explained, Paul Simon's death connects with Genesis flood symbolism through Shelley Duvall's death on the date 7/11, 7 times 11 days before the mansion signs, which are 2 times 17 days before the predicted death of Paul Simon. And in Genesis 7:11, the flood began on the 17th day of the second month. Well, in God's signs, Jimmy Carter is symbolism for Methuselah, which will be explained in the Jimmy Carter videos. Methuselah was Noah's grandfather who died at the time of the flood. The name Methuselah means when he dies, destruction. And so both of these men and their deaths will be communicating prophetically from God, trumpeting for the watchman to recognize that now is the time. The judgment destruction will now begin. The 7 trumpets that follow the sound of silence. Methuselah, when he dies, destruction. That's why the connection with the flood symbolism to the death of Paul Simon, which connects to the death of Jimmy Carter, who is symbolism for Methuselah, the grandfather of Noah, who died at the time of the flood judgment. Bible prophecy, ancient Tyre in Isaiah chapter 23, is symbolism for America. Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, and 83 is the 23rd prime number. Also, Paul Simon, well, I'm jumping ahead. Well, Paul Simon, yeah, okay, I'm jumping ahead. So, this is something that I have come to learn. All right? Do I explain it here? I don't think so. So, I'm just going to briefly explain this because this will be new to everyone. All right? This is, in my mind, a fact. The 23rd chapter of Isaiah, so people say, well, you know, America isn't in the Bible. This isn't true. This isn't the only place that America is in the Bible. But the 23rd chapter of the book of Isaiah is about America. It isn't about ancient Tyre. Okay, it is. But God put this chapter in there not for Tyre, but for America. Ancient Tyre is symbolism for America. Because the thing that ancient Tyre was known for, the reason why it was successful, was its protective barrier, which was the sea, the ocean. It wasn't until Alexander the Great built a causeway from the mainland to the island that ancient Tyre was able to be captured by an enemy. So ancient Tyre prospered and thrived because of this protection, this natural protection of the oceans. But that's America. That is America. America has been blessed, unlike other nations, with this immense bodies of water on each of its sides that has provided natural protection in the past. Okay, so also, there is a mix between ancient Tyre and Tarshish in this chapter that really makes no sense unless we see for what it is really talking about, America. The chapter mixes this allegory of ancient Tyre in with Tarshish. Well, what is Tarshish? Where is Tarshish? There's all kinds of evidence to suggest that Tarshish is Great Britain. But furthermore, this place Tarshish is associated with ships. That is the UK. There was a time where the sun never set on the British Empire because it was the world's naval power. That's also why God had it designed that this island was separated from the rest of Europe. It created not only a unique culture with a unique language that was blessed, but it provided this island nation with a naval power that would spread out over the entire earth and cross-pollinate cultures and spread the gospel around the world. But this chapter 23 in Isaiah also speaks of the daughter of Tarshish. Well, what other nation do you know of where it's known for having a daughter? This is clearly speaking of America once again. Okay? And America is known for its trade and being the naval power as well. It's the daughter of Tarshish. The reason for America's superpower status is largely due to its navy. It can reach anywhere in the world. Okay, so this chapter is about America. There's more reasons for knowing this as well, by the way. Tarshish is a homonym for beryl, which is a gold stone, and this is all hinting at Yellowstone and on, which I explained in other videos. But back to this subject, now that I've explained this. So, ancient Tyre in Isaiah chapter 23 is symbolism for America. All right? Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, and 83 is the 23rd prime number. Prior to January 3rd, 2024, it was expected there would be a prophetic sign related to Paul Simon. And on this day, the roof of the mansion of Miami Dolphins Tyreek Hill was on fire. Tyreek Hill hints at Tyre, ancient Tyre, okay? God is using Tyreek Hill in his signs. There's another Tyreek Hill sign, for example. The date 1-3 hints at the number 13. The number 13 symbolizes, well, let me just say this before I move on because I don't think I mentioned it here. On this same day, the number 13 in the Bible is symbolic of the Antichrist, as I explained, I think, earlier. And that's associated with ancient Persia because Haman, a type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 13th days of the month. Well, the antitype, if you will, of Haman in Iran, because Iran is Persia, his gravesite was bombed on this date 1-3, January 3rd. And the bomb was 1,300 feet from his grave. That was part of the news story. I think it was 1,300. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, it was the date 1-3. And Haman in the book of Esther in the Bible was a general, just like this general Soleimani, right? That's who was the gravesite was bombed. The general, just like Haman. Okay, so back to what I was saying here. On this date 1-3, though, we had the roof fire, and we knew ahead of time that it would be related to Paul Simon, and we knew ahead of time that Paul Simon, God was using for mansion symbolism. And so we have, on this day that was expected in advance, this prophetic sign involving a mansion, which was the roof fire of Tyreek Hill's mansion, the Miami Dolphins player. The date 1-3 hints at 13. The number 13 symbolizes America, which began with 13 colonies. Paul Simon had two famous songs named America and American Tune. The number 13 is also symbolic of the Miami Dolphins. Oh, you know what? Another thing, since we got onto the Bible regarding all of this in America in the Bible, the 13th tribe is America. Okay, so Joseph, the tribe of Joseph was divided into two, Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh, although the younger one, was allotted the inheritance. Just like America, the younger one was allotted the inheritance. America became the superpower after the decline of the British Empire. So there's that parallel. But also, that's what the 13 colonies is symbolizing, how America is the 13th tribe. That's why, the tribes of Israel were allotted locations, like states, if you will, within the land of Israel. Each tribe had a location that was for that particular tribe in the land of Israel. Well, that's states. And there were 13 of them. 13 colonies became 13 states at the founding. Because God was communicating that America is the 13th tribe. It is one of God's nations. Okay. So Paul Simon had two songs named America and American Tune. Paul Simon in God's Signs is symbolism for America. The number 13 is also symbolic of the Miami Dolphins. And again, on this day, it was the Miami Dolphins player whose roof caught fire of his mansion. Barack Obama hosted the 85 Bears, Chicago Bears, at the White House. 85 hints at 8 plus 5 equals 13. And when they were at the White House, Obama said that they were the greatest team in history. The problem is that they lost one game in their 85 season to the Miami Dolphins. And the Miami Dolphins of 13 years earlier in 1972, were the only team in history to never have lost a game in their season. Okay? So the 85 Bears were said to be the greatest team, but they lost one game to the Miami Dolphins. And 13 years earlier, the Miami Dolphins had a perfect season without losing a game. The MVP in the 1972 Dolphins Super Bowl was player number 13. The one game that the 85 Chicago Bears lost was during week number 13 in the season. And it was to the Miami Dolphins, and it was because of Dolphins quarterback number 13, who was able to defeat their defense, which is why the Bears were so successful. But they couldn't overcome the offense of this particular quarterback, which had a unique quick pass style of play. So it was because of number 13 that they lost. Obama hosted the Chicago Bears at the White House on the Day of Atonement in 2011, exactly 13 years before the Day of Atonement in 2024, which was the prophetic final Day of Atonement before the end, and the prophetic sign involving Trumpet's rally in the 31st state. 31 hints at 13. This is why Tyreek Hill's mansion fire occurred on the date 1-3. The Miami Dolphins player's mansion occurred on the date 1-3 because it hints at 13. The mansion fire was exactly 14 weeks before Paul Simon sang Graceland in the White House mansion, and the Graceland mansion is on 14 acres. 14 is the fifth semi-prime number, and God uses this, a number only divisible by two other prime numbers. And the White House mansion is on 5 acres, okay? So the Graceland mansion is on the fifth semi-prime number of acres, and the White House mansion is on 5 acres, and Simon is associated with the number 5. Daniel 9:27 regards the period of the Antichrist on the Temple Mount, and the Graceland mansion is symbolic of the temple on the Temple Mount. The Antichrist will reside in the White House mansion, where Paul Simon sang Graceland, about the Graceland mansion. The mansion fire on January 3rd is exactly 9 months and 27 days before it is predicted that Paul Simon will die on October 30th. And again, that's relevant because Daniel 9:27 regards the period of the Antichrist on the Temple Mount, for which the Graceland mansion is symbolic of. Both 1-3, January 3rd, and October 30th, 10:30, hint at the number 13. This 9 months and 27 days is also 301 days, and this too hints at the number 13. This is also exactly 43 weeks, and October 30th, 2024, will be the 4th day of the week, and Simon is predicted to die at 3 a.m. because of his album, the first one with Garfunkel, named Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. That's why Paul Simon will die on a Wednesday, the fourth day of the week at 3 a.m., and that's why this exact 43 weeks, which is the same as 9 months and 27 days and all of that. 301 days, like I just explained. On September 8th, 2024, Tyreek Hill, as in Tyre, symbolism for America, was arrested in Miami. The treatment, and this was a national news story, the treatment Hill received has been in the news because it was filmed and because the officer has previously been suspended for a total of 50 days for his conduct. The officer had 4 5-day suspensions. September 8th, 2024 was 6 plus 6 plus 6 days before the Adams family mansion raid, the Gracie Mansion, Mayor Adams, the Jimmy Kimmel, Prince Harry haunted mansion, and Riley Keough's book about Graceland Mansion. September 28th is also, that's a typo. September 8th, the day of the Tyreek Hill arrest, is also 2 times 26 days before the predicted death of Paul Simon. And that hints at H226 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance, which is the word that means prophetic sign, which confirms that the arrest of Tyreek Hill is a prophetic sign, pointing to America and the beginning of the destruction of the 7 trumpets, followed by the sound of silence, which is symbolized by Paul Simon's death. Now, the 50 days and the 5-day suspensions of this officer confirms everything as well, because Paul Simon is again associated with the number 50 and 5. His only solo number 1 hit was 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, as in 50 days. Not only that, by the way, January 3rd, 2024, the mansion sign was 50 days before February 22nd, another date that I knew a couple of years in advance, at least a year and a half or something, whatever, that it would be a very important date. February 22nd, 2024. And I knew of this 50 days connection too, and I knew because of the 50 ways to leave your lover and all that. Well, anyway, the February 22nd sign is a sign, the day that 74,000 customers were without power due to solar flare with AT&T customers. 74 hints at the date 74, the date of America's birth. February 22nd, 2024 was exactly 40 years after Elvis's plane was returned to Memphis and Graceland Estate to great fanfare. The highway was shut down in Memphis. The mayor named it Elvis Presley Day. And that was a homecoming. And it's symbolism for the rapture, the flight, the homecoming, the number. So also the reason why the exact 40 years from February 22nd, 1984 to February 22nd, 2024 is because Graceland, as I mentioned, is in Egypt, and the Graceland mansion is symbolic of the king's palace in Egypt. And after the king of Egypt persecuted the Israelites in Egypt, they left Egypt, they escaped the Pharaoh, the Red Sea was parted, and then they wandered the desert for 40 years. In the 1991 The Addams Family movie, the father, Gomez, is played by famous actor Raul Julia, who was born in Puerto Rico. Simon has a famous song named Me and Julio, in which the lyrics are about New York City, and Simon has a song, Born in Puerto Rico, that was written for his Broadway musical in Manhattan, New York City. Simon's album for his musical about a Puerto Rican was his 9th studio album, and the Broadway musical in Manhattan, Simon's Broadway musical, is known for having cost $11 million and being one of the biggest flops in Broadway history. It was in Manhattan that the prophetic events of 9/11 took place, which is why the 9th studio album and the $11 million loss. Simon famously sang on Saturday Night Live in Manhattan a few days after 9/11, and he sang at the 9/11 memorial on the 10th anniversary. Okay, and so that's hinted at with 1991. And but also, this is more confirmation of the significance of the raid of Mayor Adams' mansion. Because again, it hints at the Adams family mansion, but the father is played by Gomez, played by Raul Julia. But what's not explained here is the other connections regarding Raul Julia, which are amazing. Okay, I just can't explain everything in this video. Hopefully I'll have time to get into more of Raul Julia. But it's confirmation because God had already incorporated with a connection me and Julio. Okay, that connected to July 24th. And that's explained in another video. And July 24th in turn connected on to the day of the Adams, the mansion of Adams being raided. The raiding of Mayor Adams' Gracie mansion. Paul Simon is known to be an avid New York baseball or Yankees baseball fan. And his private concert in New York City and the indictment of the New York City Mayor Adams were 5 days and 5+1 days, respectively, after Shohei Ohtani broke the baseball record by achieving 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases in a season, and also 51 home runs and 51 stolen bases in a season on this same day, September 19th, 2024. Let me just repeat that. First of all, God is using Shohei Ohtani, this unprecedented athlete in Major League Baseball history, and baseball has a long history. But this player is completely dominating the league, and he has reached unprecedented levels of achievement here. For example, 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases in a season. I just want to also say that God is using Japan. This Shohei Ohtani person, well, one thing too is that his name Ohtani hints at Obama. Okay, God is using these various names such as Ohtani to hint at Obama. But God is using Japan in his signs for 3 different reasons. 1, nuclear bomb symbolism. 2, the land of the rising sun symbolism for the coming catastrophic solar flare and coronal mass ejection that will knock out the power grid. But 3, and very importantly, God is using Japan for symbolism for Japanese animation. But not only Japanese animation, but the Japanese culture. But okay, so first of all, the culture is, and has been for years now, obsessed with these nonsensical cartoon characters that are beings, if you will, that do not relate to anything. They are symbolic of demons. And this culture that has become popularized among the millennial especially Gen Z, but the young millennial generation today in America and the West, with young girls, for example, or women dressing up as these characters called cosplay, costume play, this is all demonic. It's symbolism for demons. This interest in Japanese animation is demonic as well, because Japanese animation is rooted in Japanese culture, which goes back to its ancient or pagan religion, spiritualist religion. And the genre of Japanese animation is obsessed with spiritual possession of people. Okay, it goes back to their pagan religion, which is rooted in truth, but not quite. There is truth to it, which is that demons possess pagan people that and cultures that haven't been exorcised of these demons and demonic influence. The West, Europe, was exorcised of this with Christianity. Now that it has lost its Christianity, turned its back on God, the West and America are in the process of becoming demonically possessed. Hence, for example, the interest currently in America and the West in Japanese culture, and which is symbolic of demonic possession. One thing, too, that Jesus said is that once a house is cleaned and the demon leaves, the demon then returns with 7 more of his friends, 7 more demons. So the current possession that's underway of America, demonic possession, is far worse than, for example, what is the case in Japan, a nation that never knew God. That goes for other nations that are highly demonically influenced as well, such as China and India. But these nations never knew God, and they're not in the process of getting 7 times the demonic possession that America and the West is currently receiving. So this is why Japan. Now, what I found interesting that occurred to me this morning is that Japan is made up of 5 letters, and if we include Okinawa, it has 5 main islands. And I think Okinawa is appropriate to add to the 5 because it is the largest of the South Pacific islands in the chain of islands. But also it's historically significant. It relates to America. There are 32 U.S. military bases on Okinawa, and God has used Okinawa in his signs, specifically on December 2nd, 2023, which is explained in another video. But also 32 is the equivalent of the name Obama in simple English gematria. And the name Okinawa also hints at Obama in God's signs. Okay, and also the bombs were dropped after taking off, launching from Okinawa, and the name Obama hints at Obama. All right? So there's good reason to believe that Okinawa is important in God's signs, and therefore we could add it to the main islands of Japan, and that would give us 5. Well, why is this important? Well, the 5th trumpet. And again, I'm sure I've probably already stated in this video, but maybe I haven't, but it's been explained in other videos. The reason for the prophetic significance of Paul Simon, one major main reason, is that he is symbolism for The Sound of Silence, his first big hit with Art Garfunkel that launched his career. The Sound of Silence is a hint at the brief period of silence that John experienced in heaven in Revelation 8:1. And that's why Paul Simon, whose most recent album is 7 Psalms, this is why Paul Simon's death will be symbolism for a brief period of calm before the destruction because following the brief sound of silence in heaven is the 7 trumpet judgments, hence the 7 Psalms album. The seven trumpet judgments are about destruction, and also specifically America, but that's another explanation. So that's why Paul Simon is very important, and the timing of his death. Okay, now he is predicted to die 5 days before Jimmy Carter, and that's because Paul Simon is associated with the number 5, as I have explained earlier in this video. And Jimmy Carter is symbolism for Methuselah. I think I already explained this, so I apologize. But Methuselah, his name in the Bible, his name Methuselah means when he dies destruction, which is why Methuselah died right at the time of the judgment destruction of the flood. Methuselah was Noah's grandfather. Okay, and that's why Carter will die right after Paul Simon. Also, right before Carter's inauguration, Paul Simon performed for Carter at his pre-inaugural ball, and he sang American Tune, symbolism for America. Okay, and it's a melancholy song, and so that's also symbolic. So these two, the timing of these two men and their deaths will be symbolism for the beginning of the destruction in the 7 trumpet judgments. And that's why also there will be this 5 days in between the two men's death. And this is also because of the 5th trumpet, which is about demonic possession. And the demonic possession in the 5th trumpet will be, and by the way, it's the 5th out of 7 trumpets, 5-7 in other words. 5G, G, the letter G is the 7th letter in the alphabet. The demonic possession will be triggered by 5G frequencies. And music is also frequencies in the air. And this is because this is symbolism for what is called, because of the phrase in the Bible, the prince of the power of the air, referring to Satan, who is mentioned in Revelation 9:11, which is why Paul Simon, the musician, as in frequencies in the air, is associated in God's signs with 9/11. He performed on Saturday Night Live right after 9/11 in Manhattan, because that's where the show is taped or filmed. And also he performed at the 10th anniversary at the memorial. And so that's also a hint at Revelation 9:11, which is about demonic possession. And and Paul Simon is known to be an avid baseball fan. So back to what I was saying in this paragraph here, there's a lot more going on here than can be stated in just a paragraph that needs to be explained regarding why it is relevant we have this baseball sign and why it relates to Paul Simon. Okay? And so that's why September 25th and 24th were 5 days and also 5+1 days after this Japanese baseball player reached the 50 and 51 level of home runs and stolen bases, which hinted at adding 5 and also 5+1 days. All right, now, so let's see, let's get back to the paragraph here. Otani, and by the way, this game, God uses records for his signs. Not only was this a record day for the level of home runs and stolen bases by a player, but it was said to be, and I forget all of the details of what he achieved in this game, but it was said to be the best ever offensive game by a player. So he did more than just than this. I just forget the details, and it's not really so relevant right at this moment. Otani plays for the Dodgers, a team. Oh, by the way, he plays for Los Angeles. This Japanese player, as I just mentioned, is symbolic of demonic possession, and Los Angeles in God's signs is a hint at the fallen angels, demons. So anyway, Otani plays for the Dodgers, a team known for having relocated from New York City. The baseball game on September 19th, this Dodgers-Otani baseball game, was exactly 43 years after Simon and Garfunkel's prophetic reunion concert in New York City. And 43 hints at the fourth day of the week and 3 a.m., which is when Simon is predicted to die because of his album Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. So what I didn't get into in this paragraph, because I believe it's already been explained, but the 24th, which was 5 days after the 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases, that was the day that Simon held a private concert in New York City that was only learned about on the day of the concert. And 5+1 days was the day that the mayor of New York City was indicted, and then his Gracie mansion was raided, and Paul Simon has the song about the Graceland mansion, and on and on. It was the day of the new published interview of the granddaughter of Elvis about the Graceland mansion, and on, as I have already explained, really. So let's not just repeat ourselves here. But what's also interesting, though, is that this 19th date, September 19th, was known ahead of time, and one of the reasons was because of this 43 years exact connection, and that was known to be relevant because it hints at the fourth day of the week and 3 a.m. because of Simon and Garfunkel's first album, Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m., and this 43 years gets us back to Simon and Garfunkel, the prophetic reunion concert. Barack Obama will become the president again after Michelle Robinson Obama becomes the president. Michelle Robinson is predicted to replace Kamala Harris after it is predicted she will die in a plane crash. Paul Simon's song, Mrs. Robinson, hints at this. The song Mrs. Robinson contains a lyric about famous New York Yankee Joe DiMaggio. Simon sang Mrs. Robinson in center field of Yankee Stadium shortly after DiMaggio's death, and the announcer spoke about how the song has immortalized Joe DiMaggio. God pairs 23 and 44 to confirm his signs and connections. The 44th president is the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. The Yankees' prophetic baseball game on the day that the New York mayor's Gracie mansion was raided was exactly 4 + 4 + 4 months after the death of Brooks Robinson, who famously played all 23 years of his Hall of Fame baseball career for the Baltimore Orioles. Exactly 2 times 3 months. Exactly 2 times 3 months after the death of the Baltimore Orioles Robinson, who played his entire 23-year career in Baltimore, was the day that the Baltimore Bridge collapsed and killed 2 times 3 people on March 26, 2024, which in turn was exactly another 2 times 3 months before Adams' Gracie mansion was raided at 181 East End Avenue when the Yankees lost to the Orioles. Brooks Robinson's nickname. So I threw in that detail there, and I might as well explain it. 181 is the equivalent of the name Barack Obama in Hebrew gematria. Yes. In Hebrew gematria, 181, Barack Obama. And again, Barack Obama wore number 23, and we had all of these 23s here, and so that's why I threw in that detail. Well, anyway, so Brooks Robinson's nickname was Mr. Hoover. The collapse of the Baltimore Bridge hints at the predicted collapse of the Hoover Dam on August 23, 2025. Robinson wore jersey number 5, and as explained, the singer of Mrs. Robinson is symbolized by the number 5, Paul Simon. Paul Simon is predicted to die exactly 5 weeks after Gracie Mansion was raided. By the way, Joe DiMaggio also wore jersey number 5. Okay, and Joe DiMaggio actually connects to Robinson too. I'm getting ahead here. This is something new, so I didn't have an opportunity to put this anywhere else in a video or anything. But let's just take a pause here, and I'll bring us back up to speed when I finish this little thing that I want to say here. So Joe DiMaggio is connected to a Robinson as well. Not only is his name in Paul Simon's Mrs. Robinson song, but Joe DiMaggio played in the first ever, and God uses firsts for his signs, first ever integrated World Series. And God uses these firsts for black people to hint at the first affirmative action black president, Barack Obama. That's ultimately what's going on here. And again, Barack Obama will become the president again through Michelle Robinson. So in this World Series, Joe DiMaggio's Yankees played the Dodgers, and on the Dodgers was Jackie Robinson. In the first year, he was the player, everyone knows, to be the first black player in the major leagues, and this was his first year, and the Dodgers were in the World Series. This was the first integrated Dodgers World Series. I could be wrong. Maybe Jackie Robinson entered the Major League Baseball prior to 1947, but it was the first integrated World Series. Let's just leave it at that. That was in 1947. That was 77 years ago. That's because God is pointing with this 77 years. And by the way, I predicted before the playoffs began that this World Series would be between the Dodgers and New York. Last night, the Yankees won their series, and currently, as I'm speaking, the Dodgers are winning their game, and if they win, they will be in the World Series. So my prediction was correct there. I didn't document this in a video. No one would think no skeptic would believe that would be special anyway. But that was predicted in advance, and I knew this because of the history between these two teams in the World Series. What was learned maybe a week or so ago was that 1947 was the first integrated World Series, and God will be pointing to this because of the first black president, like I just explained. Now, the reason why it was 77 years ago, and that will be talked about when this World Series gets underway, it will be talked about how the Yankees and Dodgers played each other in the World Series in 77. Back before the league expanded, the Dodgers were in Brooklyn, and the Dodgers and Yankees frequently played against each other in the World Series. But since that old era, that doesn't happen anymore, and this will be a big, amazing throwback that the sports media will be talking about, and it will be talking about this 77 years since then. But why is that significant? Because it's pointing to Jimmy Carter, who was inaugurated in 77. The reason why Jimmy Carter is important and why he was inaugurated in 77 is that he is symbolism for a series of 7 kings that parallel the prophecy in the book of Revelation, chapter 17, which regards this series of 7 kings and then a 6th king that was, is not, and will be again, the 8th king. Okay, the 8th king, which is the Antichrist, in this parallel, was, is not, and will be again. Currently, Barack Obama, and at Jimmy Carter's funeral, Barack Obama will have been, is not the president, will have been the president, is not the president, and will be the president again. Okay? That's why this funeral of Jimmy Carter will be a massive prophetic sign. There will be the former presidents lined up in chronological order, a series of presidents that will hint at this prophecy of 7 kings, and that's why Jimmy Carter begins this prophecy with his inauguration in 77, the first of the 7 kings. The 7th king is Trump, and he was also inaugurated in a year ending in 7, and on that day, he was exactly 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. Okay, and it was 77 days before he launched missiles into Syria, or the Middle East, I should say, and 59 of them, and 59 is the seventh super prime number, and on and on. Okay, so that's why this 77 years between this series, and it was learned today that Game 5 is scheduled for October 30th. It's been known since September, that Paul Simon will die on October 30th, and it has been known long before then that he is associated with the number 5. But it has just been learned that Game 5 of this prophetic series involving the Yankees, which Paul Simon is known to be an avid fan of, will be on the date it is predicted that Paul Simon will die. Now, that's interesting. Perhaps the Yankees will win the series in 5 games. If so, perhaps Paul Simon will be extremely excited, and perhaps he'll die from a heart attack. That's pure speculation. There's no signs to indicate that Paul Simon will die from a heart attack. But definitely God has been communicating the significance of Paul Simon being a Yankees fan in his prophetic science, as I am in the process of explaining. Now, what I have explained so far is that we have here from Brooks Robinson's death to September 26th, we have, and Robinson playing for 23 years, we have 2 times 3 months to the 2 times 3 deaths at the Baltimore Bridge. And that's hinting at the Hoover Dam that will collapse. And Paul Simon, as explained in another video, is associated with the Hoover Dam, bridge over troubled water, and his birth date, etc. But also, that date is in turn 2 times 3 months. And Brooks Robinson was nicknamed Mr. Hoover. And then 2 times 3 months after the collapse of the Baltimore Bridge is September 26th. 2 times 3 months after 2 times 3 deaths in the Baltimore Bridge collapse. Okay, and so now September 24th was exactly 32,200 days after Joe DiMaggio collided in an infamous collision with another baseball player, Hall of Famer Goose Goslin. And this is a hint at the coming bird strike collision of Kamala Harris and her plane that will then crash into a baseball stadium, which is why Paul Simon performed Mrs. Robinson in center field of a baseball stadium, but also exactly 32,200 days after this collision with Joe DiMaggio was the day that Paul Simon performed a concert, a private one in New York City on September 24th. The reason for 32,200 days is because Joe DiMaggio is associated with Marilyn Monroe, and the big thing about her story is that she died at an unusually young age, and 2 of the movies she starred in have a theme of immortality, which hints at the first lie of the age that the serpent told Eve in the garden, which is that she shall surely not die, which is mentioned in Genesis 3:22, this lie, hence the 32,200 days. That's because the big lie at the end of the age will also be the same lie at the beginning of the age, and there will be a promise of immortality. All right, so back to what I was saying here in this diagram. Robinson wore jersey number 5, and as explained, the singer of Mrs. Robinson is symbolized by the number 5. Paul Simon is predicted to die exactly 5 weeks after Gracie Mansion was raided, which was 2 times 3 months after 2 times 3 deaths in the collapse of the Baltimore Bridge. And Paul Simon is associated with the Graceland Mansion, which was 2 times 3 months after the death of Robinson, who wore number 5. And had a 23-year career in Baltimore. Simon's song, Bridge Over Troubled Water, which again is hinted at with the Baltimore Bridge and vice versa, symbolizes the Hoover Dam over the Colorado River and vice versa. The song Bridge Over Troubled Water was released exactly 67 years and 11 months after the birth of famous American West landscape photographer Ansel Adams, One of the most famous of Adams' photos is that of the Hoover Dam, taken in 1941, the year of the birth of Paul Simon. Okay? Next to Ansel Adams' photos is the year in which the photo was taken. Like, all of the photos have the year the photo was taken. It's part of what Ansel Adams' photos are. Okay? And so his Hoover Dam over the Colorado River photo was taken in 41, and Paul Simon was born in 1941. The Hoover Dam is predicted to collapse exactly 41 weeks after the predicted death of Paul Simon on October 30th. This is a typo. Mayor Adams and the book by Frank Adams at Elvis's mansion, which again Elvis was reading at the time of his death, hints at Ansel Adams and vice versa. The connection of 67 years and 11 months between the birth of Ansel Adams and the release of Bridge Over Troubled Water, okay, again, it's 67 years and 11 months between the release of the song Bridge Over Troubled Water and Ansel Adams' and the birth of Ansel Adams, which is amazing, okay, because of what I'm explaining here. So the 67 years and 11 months between Ansel Adams and the release of Bridge Over Troubled Water hints at 6,711, which is the 1,801st semi-prime number, which is why Adams' mansion is located at 181 East End Avenue. The Antichrist Obama will take over the White House mansion, and the name Barack Obama is equal to 181 in Hebrew gematria. 67 years and 11 months is also 5 times 163 months. The number 5 is symbolic of God's grace, and Simon is associated with the number 5 and also Graceland mansion, as was Mr. Hoover, who wore jersey number 5. 163 is the 38th prime number. 38 hints at 3 eighths, and the name Jesus in Greek is equal to 888, 888 in Greek gematria. Simon's song, Bridge Over Troubled Water, is symbolism for the rapture by Jesus of God's faithful who will be rescued from the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing. You know what I'm talking about, the pointy thing. Simon was born exactly 315 weeks after the Hoover Dam was dedicated in a ceremony that included President Roosevelt on September 30th, 1935. 315 is the Greek word in Strong's Concordance that means to necessitate, compel, force, constrain, urge, which points to being compelled out of necessity to take the thing, the mark of the Antichrist, as we have already experienced, by the way. Thus, the necessity of the rapture and the rescue of God's faithful from this severe persecution from the Antichrist, because the thing is a spiritual abomination. And a thing is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or false form of religious worship. In fact, for those that are wise, it did include already a false form of religious worship, and it does not need an additional supposed age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why most or the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is, in fact, it is a judgment for this particular doctrine. And the commonly held, and believe me, I know, okay, so the reason for the prediction in this video is to prove what I have just said. And believe me, I know far better than you the reason why God is providing this prediction and why he has given me a voice through this prediction. It is to prove what I have just said. Case closed, end of debate, no more discussion. It is the mark of the Antichrist, period. The commonly held objections that people have based on their understanding of Bible prophecy are answered in the must-watch snake bite video on this channel But make no mistake, when the prediction comes to pass, it will prove what I have just said, and therefore the commonly held objections that people have are not correct. Okay. So, as I was saying, Paul Simon was born exactly 315 weeks after the Hoover Dam was dedicated, okay? And 315 hints at this: necessitate, compel, force, constrain, which points to being compelled out of necessity to take the thing. Thus, the necessity for the rapture. This 315 weeks is also 2,205 days. And God uses this and other variations of these four numbers to hint at 2,520 days that is in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the period of the end times of the Antichrist. By the way, it is only symbolism. We are well inside the 2,520 days, which began in 2017. The Hoover Dam is 726 feet high. G 726 in Strong's Concordance is the word that means rapture. A bridge over troubled water is symbolism for the rapture. That's why the Hoover Dam is 726 feet high. Also, US Highway 93 runs over it, and before the bridge was completed in about 2010, I believe, the other bridge, this was a highly trafficked and the only road between Phoenix and Las Vegas, Sin City, and 93 because the sun is 93 million miles away from Earth. And the sun will knock out the power grid, and that's what the Hoover Dam produces, power. Well, anyway, so what I was saying here, the dam is 726 feet high for a reason, because of what I'm saying. It is symbolism for the rapture, and also bridge over troubled water, which is in itself symbolism for the rapture. And now it is predicted that Paul Simon will die on October 30th, exactly 1,069 months after the dedication of the Hoover Dam. 1,069 is the 60 plus 60 plus 60th prime number. That's amazing. And 666 is the number in Bible prophecy associated with the Antichrist and the mark of the Antichrist. Hence the 315 weeks, like I was saying. Okay? So Paul Simon was born exactly 315 weeks after this dam that symbolizes the rapture, and 315 means to compel, force, etc. And Paul Simon is predicted to die the 666, 60 plus 60 plus 60th prime number of months exactly after the Hoover Dam was dedicated. It's amazing, okay? The reciprocal of 89 is 0.1123. 1123 is the 188th prime number, and 8188 in Strong's Concordance is the word that means woe exclamation mark, used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God, which is why God uses this number 188 frequently in his signs. The prophetic dedication of the Hoover Dam was exactly 89 years before the death of the hit king, Pete Rose. Okay, on September 30th this year, Pete Rose died, and it was exactly 89 years after the Hoover Dam was dedicated. Rose, the hit king, wore number 14, jersey 14, which is the fifth semi-prime number. Simon is associated with the number 5, as the King of Rock's Graceland mansion is on 14 acres. Simon sang about. In the Bible, 30 years is symbolic of a king, and Simon, a baseball fan, is predicted to die exactly 30 days after the death of the hit king. 89 years is also 1,068 months, and the sum of the divisors of 1,068 is 2,520, the number in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the period of the Antichrist. And I just mentioned how Paul Simon was born this symbolic number of days after the dedication of the Hoover Dam. But we have another 2,520 from the dedication of the Hoover Dam to the death of Pete Rose, another baseball player. And again, Paul Simon is an avid baseball fan. Okay. The number in Bible so 1,068 is 2 times 2 times 3 times 89. 223 is the 48th prime number. This hints at the 48th president, who will again become the president, which will be a major woe, hence the 2 times 2 times 3 times 89, which will be a woe when he becomes the president again. Like the controversy, and here's the key, here is the big thing here. Like the controversy over Rose's eligibility to return to baseball, there will be controversy over whether Obama is eligible to return to the White House mansion. Okay, the big thing about Pete Rose, as everyone knows, is his fight to become eligible, his fight to return to baseball so that he can become eligible again for the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is symbolism for a mansion. It's a hall. It's a Hall of Fame. And we are talking about the coming controversy over whether Obama is eligible to return to the White House mansion. It's amazing. I wonder if the building of the Hall of Fame is white. I'm just joking. God pairs 9 and 22 together to confirm his signs and connections and to point to the mark of the Antichrist. Simon and Garfunkel's album was released exactly 9 weeks. Simon's Graceland album, not Garfunkel. Simon's Graceland album was released exactly 9 weeks, or 2 months and 2 days, which hints at 22, before the New York Mets won the World Series in 1986. The New York Mets play in Queens, New York City, where Paul Simon grew up. The MVP of the series was player number 22. The most famous or infamous play in World Series history was Red Sox Bill Buckner's dramatic error when the Red Sox were 1 out away from winning the game. It was a very soft ground ball he should have easily caught, but instead he missed the ball entirely. Okay, it went right under his glove. The Red Sox hadn't won a World Series. Again, this player is for the Red Sox, and the Red Sox in 1986 hadn't won a World Series since 1918, when players for the Chicago Cubs threw the series in exchange for gambling profits. That's when the Red Sox beat the Cubs in 1918, okay? The missed catch by the Red Sox player against the Chicago Cubs hinted at the Chicago Cubs intentionally losing the 1918 World Series to the Boston Red Sox. Both of these teams hadn't won a World Series since 1918. And both of these teams were said to be under curses that were not broken until 2004 and 2016. In 2004, the president from Chicago, again, it's the Chicago Cubs we were talking about, who is the Antichrist curse, and we were talking about a sports curse for the Chicago Cubs. In fact, it had a name, the curse of the Billy Goat, as in the goat Antichrist, but the goat Antichrist is from Chicago, and he is the Antichrist curse. And in 2004, the year the Red Sox broke their curse, was when the Antichrist from Chicago was elected to Washington, D.C. as the senator. 2016 was his last year in office as the president in Washington. Okay, so he was in office in Washington, D.C., beginning with the election in 2004, and then left the office. With his last year in office was in 2016. And by the way, 4 days before he left office, on January 20th, 2017, star player number 44 gave him jersey number 44, 4 days before he left office. Okay, so that was the ending of his time in the White House, was the Chicago Cubs. The curse of the Billy Goat, because that's Obama, the curse of the Billy Goat. Okay, he became the president after cheating regarding his place of birth, just like the cheating in the World Series in 1918. Before playing for the Red Sox, Bill Buckner played for the Chicago Cubs. And underneath the glove with which he made his error and missed catching the ball, which cost the Red Sox a World Series win, Buckner was wearing, for superstitious reasons, curse of the Antichrist, sports curse reasons, his old, which hints at sports curses, right? His old Chicago Cubs batting glove. Okay, so get this, right? The two teams that were cursed because of the 1918, and I mean that literally, God cursed these teams for a prophetic reason. These two teams that were cursed because of the 1918 World Series were Chicago Cubs and Boston Red Sox. The one out away play before the Red Sox could have broken that curse, Bill Buckner totally missed the ball with the easiest catch ever, and underneath his glove, he was wearing for superstitious reasons, his Chicago Cubs batting glove. How perfect is that God set that up? Buckner wore jersey number 22 for Chicago. And again, the MVP in this World Series for the Mets, who ended up winning because of the error by Buckner, was player number 22. Again, God pairs 9 and 22, and the Mets win was exactly 9 weeks after Simon released his Graceland album. It was also 2 months and 2 days. The number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, and this is the so-called thing for the so-called CVD, begins with a pan, ends with a demic. 1918, the year of this World Series curse, 1918 was the year of the FLU named after people from Spain. Begins with a pan, ends with a demic. That's the reason, right? God is pointing to that, right? As you can see here. Bill Buckner, through 1918, Bill Buckner wore jersey number 6 for the Red Sox. And his error infamously cost the Red Sox Game 6. The Red Sox won the 1918 World Series in 6 games. Thus, this is 3 sixes and 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. Boston won the World Series on 9/11 in 1918, 4-2. 4-2 hints at 42. The number 42 is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, which is 42 months. 42 months is the equivalent in Bible prophecy of 1,260 days. And the Red Sox won the World Series on 9/11 in 1918, 4-2, exactly 1,260 months after 9/11 in 1813, which was the day that the British landed at Washington's Mount Vernon estate and mansion before proceeding to burn down the Capitol building and the White House mansion, which was the only other time in history that a foreign enemy attacked the nation's capital, other than exactly 188 years later on 9/11 in 2001. In Strong's Concordance, H188 is the word that means woe, exclamation mark, used in the context of extreme judgment from God. Used in the Bible for this context. Bill Buckner wore number 6, and 6 is 2 times 3. The basketball president wore number 23 in high school. The most famous play in World Series history involved players number 1 and number 6, which hinted at 16. And 16 is 4 times 4. The Antichrist basketball president was the 44th president. The most famous, infamous play in World Series history that enabled the New York Mets to win the World Series was exactly 455 months before New York City Mayor Adams was indicted. 455 is equal to 13 times 35, and this hints at 1,335 days mentioned at the very end of the last chapter of the book of Daniel that regards the time of the end. And that time of the end involves the Antichrist and the Antichrist curse and the abomination, which is also in context of this 1,335 days mentioned at the end of Daniel chapter 12. And so from this Antichrist curse symbolism game with the Boston Red Sox, with the Chicago Cubs batting glove underneath the glove that missed the ball, it's like a secret. It's like a hidden thing, right? Not everyone knows that Bill Buckner was wearing his Chicago Cubs batting glove underneath, right? But the reason why that's actually news is because of the curses between these two teams. But what's also not mentioned when people talk about these two curses between these two teams and the connection to the batting glove is that it's from God because of the cheating in that World Series. Okay? And so we have from this game that symbolizes all of this. In other words, this Game 6 of the 1986 World Series points back to 1918. And baseball being intertwined with American history, which is why God uses baseball in his signs. And so we've got a huge span of time here that is being incorporated into this prophetic climax to this sign that I'm explaining right now. Right now, you are getting the reason for all of this, right? In this video, you will not hear it anywhere else. The whole thing comes together here because we have this 455 months exactly to the indictment of Mayor Adams and the raid of his mansion, the Gracie mansion, and Paul Simon being associated with baseball and the Graceland mansion, and that being in turn 5 weeks to the death of Paul Simon, who, as I just explained earlier, is or will be symbolic of the beginning of the destruction, the end. But that's what 1335 hints at because of the 1,335 days mentioned at the very end of the last chapter of the book of Daniel that regards the time of the end. Because Paul Simon's death will be symbolic of the time of the end. And the end. Okay. Bill Buckner died on May 27th, 2019. Exactly 315 weeks. And we've already covered this 315 weeks before, right? Because of Paul Simon being born 315 weeks after the dedication of the Hoover Dam. Here's another one. Bill Buckner died on May 27th, 2019. Exactly 315 weeks before what will be the curse of the Antichrist day, June 9th, 2025, the day after the rapture, when the demonic realm will collide with the earthly realm. G315 is the Greek word that means to necessitate, compel, force, constrain, urge, which points to being compelled out of necessity to take the thing. Thus, the necessity of the rapture. The number 22 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist, and this is why Buckner wore number 22 for Chicago, and why the MVP of the Lost World Series was number 22. This 315 weeks See, it's all amazing, right? As I said, this, okay, and again, this connects with 9 weeks after Paul Simon's album was released about the Graceland mansion. And we're talking about the Antichrist taking over the White House mansion, but also him enforcing the mark of the Antichrist, which is symbolized by the number 22. And that's why Bill Buckner wore 22 for Chicago, and his batting glove when he played for Chicago was worn when the World Series was lost to the Mets, who had their player number 22 become the MVP. And so this 315, because it hints at compel, necessitate, force, etc., the mark of the Antichrist. And again, 315 weeks is also 2,205 days, as I explained earlier, and this hints at 2,520 days in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the end times period of the Antichrist. As explained, the number 5 is associated with Paul Simon. The number 14 is the 5th semi-prime number. October 30th, 2024 will be exactly 14 weeks after the prophetic sign related to Paul Simon on July 24th, 2024. Simon is a 1960s folk rock singer, and the sign on July 24th was the release of the trailer for the movie about 1960s folk rock singer Bob Dylan. July 24th was in turn exactly 140 days, which also hints at 14, after the prophetic signs related to Paul Simon on March 6th, 2024, which were the news about 70s rock band The Eagles singer's litigation over the possession of the handwritten notes for his big hit Hotel California, more mansion symbolism, and the news of the 70s rock band The Doobie Brothers would produce their first album together in 44 years, as in the 44th president. For the explanation of these signs, watch the video that I made, and it's an older one that I'm not going to update. It will be talking about a prior prediction date for Paul Simon, but it is the 51st state video. That's an amazing must-watch video. In fact, you need to watch all of the Paul Simon videos, and the wise person will recognize that. But if you only watch one of the older ones, maybe this is it, but you need to watch the other ones too. Because there's other, what can I tell you? You're going to miss so many amazing, important things if you don't. But make sure you watch the 51st state video. I think on the thumbnail I have an image of Puerto Rico. You need to watch that. Okay, Simon has won 4 times 4 Grammy Awards. The Shohei Ohtani, Obama 44th president. Again, Ohtani hints at Obama, the name. The Shohei Ohtani baseball game on September 19th that I mentioned earlier, with the 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases game, was exactly 4 times 4 months after the release of Simon's recent album, 7 Psalms, which was released exactly 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days after the prophetic dream that he had in which he was told to make the album. Okay, first of all, in all of his interviews regarding the new album, Paul speaks about this dream that he had. In fact, he jotted down the notes after the dream and then framed this piece of paper, and he shows the journalists this framed piece of paper about the dream he had, which he says he was instructed, an audible voice told him that he was working on 7 Psalms. Okay? Now, I was also going to say, the other thing too is that Shohei Ohtani, the big news story at the beginning of the baseball season this year was the scandal regarding his interpreter that stole from him 4 times $4 million. Okay, and so that's also relevant here because we were talking about this connection with Shohei Ohtani and Paul Simon, who has won 4 times 4 Grammy Awards. And the Shohei Ohtani date, which ended up being a step in the trail of signs to Paul Simon, was exactly 4 times 4 months after the release of 7 Psalms, which was 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days after the dream that he had because he gives the date of the dream and everything too. And that's just all confirmed because of the 4x4 relevance with Shohei Ohtani, because of the beginning of the year scandal with the $4 million that the interpreter used to bet on sports, which had Shohei Ohtani been involved in any way would have been disastrous for him and the league and the baseball league, because he's the biggest star, and it would have been huge for the league. But you know what? It's coincidence is that Pete Rose died in this year of the Shohei Ohtani sports betting scandal. All right, I just looked it up, and God pairs 9 and 44 together because the 44th president was inaugurated in 09, one reason for this. And this is how God's science works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter. And if we think about it, the simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together. And I know these are the numbers because I've been spending more than full-time hours from morning until night for more than 6 years studying his big picture of signs. Well, anyway, God pairs 9 and 44 together, and it just so happens that the date that Paul Simon is predicted to die on October 30th will be exactly... No, I'm sorry. The date Pete Rose died, this is important. Pete Rose died on September 30th, and September 30th hints at 9 times 3, and that's 27. But it's also 9 plus 9 plus 9, and God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and the number 9 is the most important number in God's signs because from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. So Pete Rose, on the date 9/30, hints at big judgment, right? Now, Pete Rose, what's he known for? For cheating and betting on sports and betting on baseball. Okay, now Pete Rose died exactly 27 weeks, and he died on a date that hints at 27, but he died exactly 27 weeks after Shohei Ohtani spoke for the first time regarding the scandal involving his interpreter. Shohei Ohtani, normally shy from the media and interviews, but he spoke about it for the first time on March 25th, 2024. And that's exactly 27 weeks before Pete Rose died. That's amazing beyond words. Because again, also, the scandal is about $4 million that was stolen, and it's 9 plus 9 plus 9 weeks from that symbolic date to the death of Pete Rose, who was known for his baseball sports betting scandal. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And again, he was the hit king, and 30 years is symbolic of a king, and Pete Rose died 30 days before it's predicted that Paul Simon will die, a baseball fan. This is merely scratching the surface of the reasons for how this prediction is known in advance. For more information, please visit Odyssey spelled ODYSEE.com, or rumble.com video channels named Harris Crash Prediction. Also read the website trumpprediction.com. And if you are on the platform that has the initials YT, you know what I'm talking about. That platform, what are you doing? You should not be on this platform anymore, because you never know when this channel won't be here. If you're going to still watch the videos on this channel, fine, but just make a note of these other alternative channels in case one day you discover that you can't find the videos here anymore. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.